problem. Okay, with that, I will start with my introductions. So my name is Jen Bentley. I am the Alumni Officer for the Faculty of Health and have organized this event for us today. But I'd also like to start by acknowledging that much of the work of the University of Waterloo takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work today toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office, if you are looking for any more information or resources. But I'm excited to welcome everyone here today to our second of our Faculty of Health Alumni Office Hours. Today featuring kinesiology alumnus Michael Lau, who is here with us. Bringing back alumni to connect with our students is an important priority for both the Faculty of Health and the broader university. It helps us show students what's possible, the success that our alumni have had, and the stories they can share help to shine a light on the path for students who might be wondering what their own futures will look like. We are planning to host the Alumni Office Hours event series every term, so I just want everyone to know that you can look forward to many more of these types of events. So if you enjoy what you experienced today, I'd love for you to share that information with your friends. And if you have ideas on other career types and career paths that you'd love to learn more about, please share those in the chat and I can look at including those in our future events. And then lastly, in order to make this the most of this small group session, it'd be really nice to see some friendly faces on screen, and I'd love to ask you to turn your cameras on so that Michael can feel like he's having a conversation with a group of students as opposed to just a blank computer screen, because that's always a little bit nicer. So he does have a bit of a presentation that he's going to share with each of you. And then after that, we'll enter Q&A and some group discussion. So I do encourage everyone to turn your cameras on for that. And when we get to that point, you can raise your hand and ask any questions you have, and we'll just have a great conversation. Okay, and with that, I'd love to introduce Michael Lau. He is a steadfast advocate of the user in medical product design and development. Michael leads Nemera's Human Factors Engineering capability, a group charged with ensuring that user needs are understood and met through design and helping clients fulfill human factors regulatory requirements. Michael provides designers and engineers with key findings garnered from analytical and usability evaluations so that sound design decisions that satisfy both the user needs and product requirements can be made early in development. He is a graduate of the University of Waterloo Kinesiology program, and he completed his master's and PhD in industrial and operations engineering from the University of Michigan Center for Ergonomics. And everyone here is Michael Lau.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for having me on the panel here to participate in your alumni events. It's great to connect back with Waterloo. It's been a few years since I've been to the campus, although I do maintain a brother and his family in Waterloo area, so I get there from time to time. I'm originally from Toronto and grew up on the east side before coming to Waterloo. And after Waterloo, moved to the US to do graduate school and then stayed in the US where I currently live in Chicago. So let's see, where do I start? I thought I'd give you have you all read the article that was posted regarding my background, or should I do a little bit of an update or an overview of that?
Probably a brief overview would be good.
Sure.
For anyone who missed it.
Yeah. So I work in a consulting arm of my company, and basically what we do is we help our clients who are medical device manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies across the globe to bring products to the market. What that means is we help them to often to embody certain things in device form. So we do a lot of design work, and there's a lot of work that gets done to ensure that the products that they're about to release to the public can be used in a safe and effective manner. And so there's a lot of types of activities that we do to make sure that that happens. It's a very interesting and rewarding type of work that I do. It involves a lot of the time looking and analyzing things to see how they work and how they're designed, and making recommendations to how they could be improved to make sure that things are safer to use by people. And the other part of the time we spend doing a lot of gathering of feedback from potential users. So these could be doctors or nurses or other healthcare professionals of different types, lay users such as you and me, adults, kids, elderly people, folks with a particular type of disease or a certain health status. And those will be used to influence the way things are designed. So making things as user-friendly as possible and things that fit within the way people are thinking about their particular challenge or problem. And when you think medical devices, many of you may not have encountered a lot of medical devices, or some of you may have encountered a lot, and hopefully you haven't encountered that many in your life so far. But they do provide a lot of different, important health benefits to people. So these are things as small as, needles and syringes and injection devices, things that you might be giving yourself medication like inhalers and machines that like nebulizers and things that you might be using at home, blood pressure, medication, cuffs, and things like that. Things to deliver different types of medication. So whether it's IV or subcutaneous injections, or things that you're inhaling, or things that you're putting through your nose, or things that you're putting on your skin. These are all different ways that medications get into people, and they all require devices to support that activity as well. And also as well, things that you might come across in a hospital. So everything from your hospital bed, something that moves and articulates in many different ways and has all sorts of different treatment features, to the pumps, to the surgical tools, to the monitors and things that are used throughout the hospital. Those are all under the purview of medical device. So a huge space to work in, and lots of opportunity there for people to influence the design and development of these things. So you might ask me, how did I get into this? Because it seems like a far journey from kinesiology, and that is sort of what I'd like to just share with you a little bit today of sort of where I was and where I've been and what I do now. I started at Waterloo in kinesiology. I wanted to become a physical therapist a long time ago, and a physiotherapist, I guess it's in Canada, and wanted to do that. And that's why I decided to do a health profession type of undergrad, so that would be the basis of getting into physio school. Luckily, I did some co-op. And in my co-op programs, I worked at a few rehab clinics for my first 2 terms, and I discovered really what physiotherapy was all about. And not to diminish physiotherapy and its value, but what I found was that in the constant rehab and helping people get better from their surgeries and accidents and things like that, I found that the clinics that I was working for catered to specific types of surgeons, and that they would always be getting these types of cases. And so to me, it felt like, you would always be doing ACL repairs or rotator cuff repairs kind of thing, or working with back injuries or motor vehicle accidents. And to me, while rewarding in its own right, wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wanted something a little bit with more variety and a little bit more, how do we stop injuries from happening? And so I went to ergonomics, and I started to explore the world of ergonomics and what that could do. And I don't know how many of you are here that are participating in ergonomics in the option there. but it is where this all sort of goes into the field that I have eventually ended up in. So along the way, my graduate advisors, Dr. Jim Frank and Dr. Richard Wells, were encouraging me to go to graduate school, and I had no clue what graduate school was about. But I thought it was a good idea since I didn't know what exactly wanted to do after my undergrad. And so I decided to do a master's at the University of Michigan, which is in Ann Arbor. It's only about a 3 to 4 hour drive from Waterloo, so not that far. And I think there's still some co-op opportunities at a company called Human Tech that is based out of Ann Arbor as well. So went there to work with Tom Armstrong, who is an upper extremity cumulative trauma disorder specialist in the Center for Ergonomics there. And while there, spent some time figuring out what I wanted to do. And when you go into PhD school, there's always these two questions. Do you want to do academia and be a professor and do research, or do you want to go into industry and do other things? And it took me a while for me to make up my mind. But what I realized is I wanted to do stuff that was applied and applicable to the real world and not just do research all the time. A couple of the cool courses that I took during my time at Michigan was in the B school, actually, business school. And they were to do with innovation and research, commercialization, and development. So some classes that really helped to figure out, what is the process of taking some new idea, some new technology that's being developed in universities and turning that into something that is marketable, something that is of value to society, and something that can ultimately make money. And those were a couple of the courses that I did while I was there. Following my degree there, I started working in a firm called Applied Safety and Ergonomics through some of my connections at the university. This is a forensic human factors firm. And so what they do is they analyze cases where individuals have sued companies based on their products causing them harm. And usually in this case, for this firm, for human factors reasons where, you didn't warn me about certain things, you didn't show me how to do things properly. And so that was what sort of got me interested in, this whole aspect of making sure things are designed in a safe and effective manner. But what I found here was that in this landscape, you basically are settling money. People are just saying, okay, I got hurt and you're going to give me this X amount of money, or you pay a certain amount and make things go away. And really what doesn't happen is a whole lot of change, no impact on the actual products and the markets at hand. So I was like, how do I get out of this and do something where I'm doing actually development? And so I spent some time looking for a job that would match these types of needs. And so I ended up in Chicago at a company called Insight Product Development. It's a small consultancy that helped to do everything that I was describing earlier through the design of things, commercial and medical products at that point in time. And so I found myself in this whole new world that I had never really thought about applying my kinesiology skills to helping other designers and engineers figure out how to design things better for people and the people that are going to be using them. And that to me is the most interesting part of what I do now. And as I was saying earlier to some folks on the line, that our company got bought a couple of years ago by a larger company called Nemera. They're a pharmaceutical device manufacturer, so they specialize in drug delivery. But they acquired us to get our knowledge and know-how of how we do development and to help them in their process of making things more user-friendly, more geared towards making things easier to use and safer and things like that. So you can see in that list there that of a lot of the different types of activities that my team is doing throughout our work, we are working to define what exactly people need with these devices. When you think of maybe a simple example, if you have ever worked with like a blood glucose meter where you're trying to get a reading of your blood glucose, if you're diabetic, from a little device, you have to prick your finger, get a blood sample, you stick this on a piece of paper, shove it in a system, it spits out a reading and you interpret that and you do something with that information. So somewhere along the line, someone has to figure out, well, what exactly does a person need to know and do and be able to do, and to make sure that they can do that correctly every single time, so that they don't give themselves an inaccurate reading and make some bad judgment about what they should do next regarding their blood sugar levels. And so you think through this whole process of use, when they might be using it, in what context. It's not always at home in the comfort of your home. Sometimes it might be in a restaurant or on an airplane, or in some random place, like in the woods if you're camping. And that could really introduce some demands that you really have not accounted for. Maybe you take this thing in cold temperatures and all of a sudden it freezes up and doesn't work, or something like that. So you have to think about everything that humans actually need out of a product, and to design into it so that it doesn't fail when the person needs it or needs it the most. We use a lot of different tools with respect to looking at users, how they can perform. We use anthropometry to figure out sizing, strength issues, and things like that. And we're serving the environment of pharmaceutical companies, big med tech companies, startups as well. And yeah, it's very interesting, the work that we do, in that you get to work with folks that are, people that are industry professionals. First off, you're working with designers and engineers and things like that. But then you're also working with the users, which is a huge component of the work that we do, so that we could be talking to people like your mom and your dad, or your little kid brother, or people that are elderly and things like that. So you're working with that. You're also working with healthcare professionals, nurses and doctors and neurosurgeons, endocrinologists, and folks that are thinking at a different level, but they need to be able to explain how these things work to their patients in order for their patients to get the care that they need. This huge ecosystem that we're actually kind of neatly positioned as from the KIN program from Waterloo to support. And that's kind of why I was excited to talk to some of you folks today, which is, in the KIN program, you get a really solid background of what the humans do. How do humans work at the basic level, the cellular level, the anatomical level, the biomechanical, the physiological, the psychological, the sociological. And that comprehensive view allows you to think across all the dimensions that people operate in the use of these products, and allows you to think through workflows and contexts of use, and allows you to actually communicate well with people of all different types. And that's sort of the key roles that we have in what we do, is to translate what people are saying about what they need into something that designers and engineers can actually build into a product. And so it doesn't all come from kinesiology. Sometimes it comes from a little bit of engineering, a little bit of design, but I don't think those are hurdles into getting into this industry. These are things that you can pick up and learn with a few different courses and some experience to get an understanding of that whole process. That allows you to help make good decisions, because this is a very large team-oriented approach to designing of things. Just as some quick examples of things that we do, we might be doing user analysis. We might be going out into the context of use and seeing what people do, and using observational methods to find out, exactly how does a person administer the medication, or what kinds of social factors are they under as they go about doing their thing. And this could happen for lay users. It could also happen in the OR, in an operating environment, or in a clinic, or some other place where a medical procedure is being done. We take a lot of our knowledge about how people behave and what people's capabilities are, and we turn those into the analysis of different concepts. So looking at how well does a certain idea compare against another idea for making this particular tool that we're designing. We have a lot of analytical methods that we do to help us understand what kinds of demands we're placing on users, and how do we expect people to behave and respond to that. We also work with engineers and designers to figure out, okay, how does the technology support everything that we do? And what are the demands that this technology is introducing to the user to make it easier for them, or to make it possible for them to get that therapy or treatment? But in doing so, we might be making them do weird and awkward things, like, who's ever inserted a needle into their own vein? It's something that engineers and designers created so that we could inject medications into people. But imagine doing that for yourself for the very first time. It's pretty daunting. There's a lot of things that you're scared about, and you don't know exactly what is right and what is wrong, and you're just very hesitant to do that. So how do you build in or create new systems that allow you to inject things into people's veins without all of those fearful activities or aspects of that process? And we take all of these things that we are discovering and we find opportunities through design to improve on them. We take the challenges that the technical aspects that come through, whether it's due to manufacturing issues or whether it's this is the way this technology works and there's no way around it, so how do we make it work for humans? And so that's kind of the hard part of what we do, is to come up with what will be presented to a user in any way, shape, or form. In the course of my 10 years at Insight, I've had the chance to work with all of these companies and more. And you can see across this list some of the biggest companies in healthcare in the world. And you can work with all sorts of different avenues within these companies themselves. Just for, you might be wondering, oh, I know some of these brands. And you know something, oh, 3M makes Post-it notes. But did you also know 3M makes all sorts of adhesives for humans, so that things can stick to bodies and things can be worn on the body for long periods of time. Alcon, for instance, is all ophthalmic stuff, and they're working with a lot of eye things. So there's a lot of tools and instruments that go into putting things into the eye for surgical reasons. You've got a lot of pharmaceutical companies here that are doing all sorts of creative ways to get different types of drugs through different routes into your body. Some of the more cooler ones are now like sending sprays of things, not through like a normal nasal spray, but up into your olfactory cleft and further into your sinuses of your brain to get through the blood-brain barrier more quickly using different routes. There's diagnostics in here. You can see Abbott at the top there. That's doing a lot of space work in the detection of COVID, for instance. And those are medical devices that are helping save lives every day. We work with manufacturers. We work with folks that are in nutrition and getting people nutrients when they can't eat. There's lots of cardiac work in here as well. So you name it, we worked on a ton of different things. And the variety is endless. You get to see how different companies operate in a consulting role, which is kind of a neat thing to do. Often when you go and you think of, oh, I got a great job at Philips, and you go and spend your career at Philips. And at the end of your career, you say, oh, I know Philips really well, and you know everything that Philips does. But in a consulting role, you get to work with all different types of companies and see how they work, see what they value, see who hires the competent people and who hires the dregs. You get to see who is doing really cutting edge stuff and who is not. And yeah, it's a really rewarding type of industry to be in. So that's my 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I should say, of talking about my role. So enough about me. I think you folks on the line probably have some questions. And so maybe at this time, we should open it up to things that you want to hear about me. You can ask me about what I do, what I've done. You can ask me about what it's like, what you need to get into this industry. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael. So many interesting companies here too. So we can, open it up if anyone, again, as I said before, if you want to turn your cameras on, so we can have a nice group discussion, that'd be great. Michael, I'm not sure if there's more of your presentation you want to share, or we can just see the group, and feel free to raise your hand or just unmute your mic and you can ask away. And I don't know, Michael, if there's a question that you were submitted earlier, if there's one you want to tackle first.
Sure. Yeah. So anybody, please interrupt. I'm nothing fancy here. These are some of the questions that were asked to me, and I can start there, and then feel free to chime in when something, when you think of something. What initially attracted me to the ergonomics industry? Well, I think this idea of preventing injuries before they happened was where I started to have some interest in there. And, you know, I should be honest that when I was looking at kinesiology salaries versus things that were more industrial or manufacturing related to ergonomics, I was first attracted to, well, I think I can make a better livelihood as an ergonomist than I can as a kinesiologist. So that's where I started. But then as soon as I got into it, I was like, this is really interesting. And as soon as I got more into what I was thinking about, it turned from, you know, in kinesiology, we think of things as being pretty reactive, like people get hurt and we try to fix them. But as you think about what I do now, I'm like, how do we prevent people from getting hurt in the first place? And that is a big driver for what I do now, is to prevent that from happening, because rehab sucks. It's painful, it's laborious, and you don't ever know when you're actually going to hit your peak, kind of thing. So if we can prevent that, that would be great. Yeah. Where do I see this industry going in the next 5 years? So the FDA plays a really big part in how important human factors and ergonomics engineering has gotten in the last 10 years. They have created regulations that say to every medical manufacturer using a device, they say you have to prove that you have thought through all the potential ways people can approach and use your product. And you have to prove that they don't use this in a way that could harm themselves or other people in a manner that they never intended. And what I mean by that is, like, imagine you were introducing a safety shield onto a scalpel so that you could protect the users from getting cut with the scalpel after they have used the scalpel on someone else. So the scalpel itself is always going to have some sort of sharp blade to it, right? It's never going to be bladeless. But the safety system that you put on, maybe it's a sheath that you have to flick over and it covers the blade afterwards. You know, it could be something that is intended to help improve the safety of folks. But if something happens to that where, you know, a person thinks that the sheath is operated by maybe pulling it over, and instead of like pressing a button or flicking it over, and they put themselves in a way where they could actually injure themselves in a higher probability than they did without the safety shield, have you really solved anything in increasing the safety by doing something like this? So the FDA steps in and says, hey, you didn't think through all of these things about how a person could use this particular safety shield. You better go back to the drawing table, because you have introduced this risk of a person stabbing themselves with the scalpel after they've used this device on someone else. It's a simplified example of how the FDA would work in this. But the FDA is really looking over our shoulders and saying, hey, here's a process you should follow to identify all these risks. You must do testing with actual users to prove that this thing functions as you say it does and is used in the same way that you think people will use it. And that's one of the hurdles that you have to do to get something approved in order to sell it. So what I mean by that is that this industry has flourished in the last few years. There's just not enough human factors engineers and people that understand ergonomics in the field. And so people are hiring human factors for human factors roles. And a lot of the time, the people that they are hiring aren't even qualified, in my opinion, to be human factors engineers, because they might come from like a purely psychology focus, or they might come from a pure engineering focus and never understood anything about the humans. They might come from a pure information science background or something like that. And those are the places people are coming from, even as far as UX, UI design, so more the digital side of design. And while those are all important, in med device design, you have to consider users at all different levels of all different thinking capabilities, different physical capabilities, different emotional capabilities. And I think kinesiology students bring that comprehensive nature to that. So that's why I think, there's a prime role for kin students to do this. What's the one thing that you wish you knew when you were a graduate student? Actually, I think it's how hard I could work outside of grad school. I was a really lazy graduate student, and I took my time and I futzed around and I did fun things, but I took a little longer than most people did in my program. But when I got out and started working on things that I really enjoyed working, I never worked so hard in my life because I was just working on different programs with different customers and different projects, and I was fascinated and I was like learning about everything and that kind of stuff. So I could really I wish I could have pushed myself faster in graduate school to get done quicker so that I could have started working quicker, because I found that more rewarding. How did I first become interested in kin? Let's see. Like I said earlier, I wanted to become a physiotherapist. I think in high school, I did like a summer co-op type program in the physio clinic, and I really enjoyed it. And that was sort of my thinking in becoming in kinesiology. Is engineering skill required for product design? Yes. So that's a kind of a vague question, but I would say that there's designers, and there's a field of study called industrial design, which are the people that learn how to design things. Now, designing things is different from engineering things, in that engineers are the people that make the thing work and function, whereas the designer puts that into a package so that it looks a certain way and communicates what it does and how it looks, and it's more the aesthetic and the packaging of that product. And so you kind of have to have both in order to have successful product design, because if the thing doesn't work, that's no good. If the thing works but looks terrible and no one wants to use it, also no good. So you kind of have to have that happy medium. But we've been introducing this idea of, can this person actually use this product? Because if it looks great and works great, but no one can use it, does it really work? And so that similar argument applies. And so for kinesiology folks, you have to know enough about the process of engineering and enough about the process of design, but you don't have to do the design or the engineering yourself. And so that's the thing that people get scared of. Oh, it's engineering or design. No, you just have to learn enough so that you can help make educated decisions, because you're here to bring the role and the voice of the user into the mix. And so you're representing that in a way that engineers and designers can understand. So this is the problem that a user might have. If you code this thing, red light, red and green, where green is bad and red is good, or something like that, right? You could communicate that to an engineer or designer, that the model that you're having them adopt goes against everything that they know and learn from a very small age. Why are you doing that? Kind of thing. And that really is how we help to translate what's going on at the user level so that it's useful for a designer to work with. In my experience, I think it's good to have some engineering classes, some design classes, to get a scope of what you're doing. For Ergo students, I think the user-centered design type classes are really helpful to understand this. For the engineering parts, engineering economics is actually pretty useful, because you understand how people determine whether something is beneficial enough to pursue it, or it costs too much to pursue, so it's not worth it. not just financially, but in other ways too. And then, yeah, those are probably the two critical ones. And then in terms of engineering, understanding how human factors design principles are made and how to apply those, I think that's pretty key. So these might be different ways to organize information, how to look at tasks, and how to organize functions of things so that you don't overburden a user with too many things to do all at once. And you can assign some of these duties to the technology, like I want the technology and the software to do this part for me so that a person doesn't have to compute something or remember a ton of stuff in order for this thing to work. Those kinds of things. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Cassie. I just wanted to see, Cassie, do you want to ask your question?
Great.
Sure. I read when you showed all the companies that you've worked with, you had Pfizer on there.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, how the pandemic affected your job through like the past 2 years.
Great question. So we do a lot of hands-on testing with users and working with the public, and that in itself really shut down for a few months when the pandemic really started to hit, and no one knew what was going on and with the disease. And so in that time period, though, what we were figuring out is how do you collect this type of information from users without having to be in person? A lot of our stuff is, imagine you're operating something, you simulate use with something. So we put something in people's hands and we tell them, okay, go ahead and use this according to the instructions or how you think you should use it. So we were unable to do that. And so getting up to speed on how do you collect usability type information remotely, we employed all sorts of different tactics, like shipping stuff to people's homes and having them do it over Zoom or Teams or whatever, and collecting information that way, doing a lot more analytical work behind the scenes. And then finally, we got to a point where we figured out how to keep people in separate rooms within our testing facility so that someone would come in, they could be by themselves and isolated. We would be behind a two-way mirror and watching them and also isolated, and then working together through a window, basically, and those types of ways. We spent a lot of time working on rapid COVID tests. So actually one of the ones that you have available in Canada is something that we worked on to help create instructions to allow for people to do testing on their own. And if you've ever done a COVID test at home, you'll know that the swabbing process of going up into your nose can be very uncomfortable. That's one of the most important steps that you have in order to get a good sample of material to test with. And so that was something we spent a lot of time trying to figure out. How do you instruct people who have never done this before to get a good sample so that you don't have an erroneous test result? So yeah, we spent a lot of time doing COVID work too. Everybody's trying to find out the next COVID detecting system, COVID prevention, you name it. But yeah, a lot of time in the diagnostics world to help bring testing to the general public.
Was there a lot of pressure when you're working on those types of products to move things along quickly and get quick results on that stuff?
Absolutely. So pressure in the pandemic was pressure like we've seen no other, and it comes from all sides. It's not just our companies wanting to get a product out as fast as possible, but it's driven by, we're trying to save humanity. I don't want to make it sound so important, but here's a company that has the capability to produce millions of tests and get these things out into everybody's hands. How do we get that out as fast as possible? Because every day people are dying, people are getting sick. And so you have that pressure weighing on you from the humankind aspect, but then you have the company saying, okay, here's the deadlines. that we've agreed to with the FDA to get these certain milestones out. So all of a sudden, 6-month timelines, 1-year timelines that we had seen were being compressed to 30 days. And so you're trying to get as much done as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, within the constraints of the pandemic. So super challenging times, very exciting in their own way, but exhausting when you continue to work day in and day out without break.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a challenging time to work through. I just wanted to open the floor again to the students that are on here. I know some of you submitted some questions, but I want to invite people to be a part of the conversation. So just wanted to see if anyone else wanted to ask. Ryan, yeah, you've been on screen. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to build on that last question, but in terms of maybe not using COVID as an example, because again, you said it was a very high pressure situation, but with the job that you do with different companies and different deadlines, one, what happens if you don't meet that? Like you've been researching and trying new things and it's just not there? Or like, does that pressure then build up as well when you have regular deadlines to meet in terms of solution or intervention?
Yeah, great question. So we have a lot of pressure regardless of what industry we're working for or who we're working for. And mostly that comes because it's a financial pressure from companies to get things out to the market as quickly as possible. So, you know, we're pretty good at hitting our deadlines in that we are usually very good at planning out the work in advance. And so missing a deadline is not very common for us in that regard. And often deadlines are missed for reasons that are not our fault. For instance, the customer might be late on getting something to us, or parts might not be coming in time for a study to be run, or things like that. And so with that being said, if we do miss our deadlines, you know, the pressure is then to make up for them. So we will try to find areas in the project timeline to scrape back some time to get through these deadlines. Or, you know, sometimes you just have to live through some of that and you adjust. Sometimes you reduce the amount of expectation that is put on by the client, and just be like, we can't get through this in time, not our fault, or this is our fault, so we'll take responsibility for it. But yeah, it's a case-by-case basis on that one. More client management than anything when it comes down to it.
And Joy has a question. She's going to turn her mic on and ask.
You mentioned that engineers tend to lack kind of that human-centered foundation and that knowledge of human behavior. So I guess how can engineering students gain this foundation? Or what can I do as an engineering student to get better at this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is one I ask myself all the time. I've even done posters at HFES to try to address some of these gaps here. You know, I don't know if it's necessary for engineers to become experts at humans in the same way I don't expect the kinesiologists or human factors people to be experts at engineering, but to have enough of that understanding. And so for engineering focuses like industrial engineering that do focus on ergonomics and they do focus on human factors, they should be doing cross-disciplinary training in other areas that are, for instance, like anatomy and biomechanics. They should be taking a psych course. They should be taking other things that broaden their way of thinking beyond the engineering. And I think that's very valuable because, you know, engineers, if I was to paint them into one bucket, or put them into one bucket, they are very problem-solving oriented. They take what they know and they apply it to the problem at hand, and they don't necessarily think about how people are intended to use them. But as soon as you open up the eyes of engineers to this whole aspect of, yeah, how is the person who's going to use what I design use it, then a lot of, and they see it as a problem to be solved, then a lot of them get on board and become advocates for this whole process eventually. So how engineering students can get this foundation, I think, make some time in coursework to delve outside of core engineering curricula. To professors designing these curriculums, I would say there's a whole avenue of coursework that you should open up for electives for people who are interested in this type of work. That I discovered product design and development so late in my career is not a rare story, like from all facets of this process. Like people don't necessarily think about this as a career until it's really late and they've actually experienced a bit of life in order to figure out, oh, this is what I really am interested in. But if it sounds interesting to you now, I can guarantee you that it's an interesting career to follow from where you're coming from.
Great, thanks for that. Greg has a question as well that he'd like to ask.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for your talk today. Can you talk about your graduate experience at Michigan and why you decided to go there? I'm also looking at applying for grad school there.
Sure. What program are you applying to there?
It's the Masters of Movement Science.
Within the kinesiology group?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so University of Michigan is one of the top public universities in the US. And I decided to go there. I applied to a few graduate schools, maybe 2 or 3, that had good Ergo programs when I was looking for a master's degree. And Richard Wells, who I don't know if is still at Waterloo or not, or if he's retired, he had good connections down here with Tom Armstrong at Michigan. And so he came down for a visit and he took me along with him. And I came down and met some folks and fell in love with the campus. There's like a ton of resources at the University of Michigan that aren't available in smaller schools, I would say. And so that's a really interesting thing to consider, that bigger schools tend to have more money, that tend to allow you to do more things or pursue things that smaller schools may not be able to provide. Overall, I would say my graduate experience was instrumental in helping me get to where I am now. But I think I made more of it by doing things outside of the traditional career path. So for instance, I consulted on a state of Michigan grant to small to medium-sized companies around the state doing ergonomics consulting. I did research in labs, in my professor's lab for several years. I taught as a graduate student instructor, so teaching ergonomics and things like that to undergrads. And then I also had the ability to take other courses in other areas. So I took some B-school classes. I took some biomedical engineering. I took some, things that I wouldn't have thought to take until I got there, kind of thing. And that weren't offered through the Industrial and Operations Engineering program. So if this is of interest, the Kin School is, I think, more traditional kinesiology. So they're more focused on movement science and that as a basis. And I think if you're ever interested in human factors and ergonomics, then the Industrial and Operations department is where the focus of it is. But it has outreached into the School of Information, into the Biomedical Engineering School, the Psychology School, as well as the Kinesiology School. Any specific other things you're looking to ask for that question? Like, what was social life like, or what was it like living in the US, kind of thing?
I guess maybe what was it like living in the US? Because I'm applying to a few others as well. Yeah.
So Ann Arbor is what they call a college town. It's a much like Waterloo almost. It's a city that's focused around university activities, and so you'll get that there as opposed to being in a more city-oriented school, kind of like U of T, for instance. In Toronto is built into the city and it's part of the city, and it doesn't make you feel that unique when you're there. So those types of schools exist as well. So it depends where you're applying. But if it's a college town, then you can really spend some time getting to meet a lot of good people and learn and get exposure to things without it being overwhelming, as it can be in big cities. Lots of student life, football, if you feel like it, is a big thing. Basketball, it's great teams this year.
Seems like you're very invested in those teams.
Yeah, I do spend some Saturdays watching games now.
Nice. And just before we forget, so we don't miss taking a photo for Class C, I will just ask anyone who's willing to turn their camera on for a quick photo op. That would be really great. Maybe a few more people can join us on screen. Thanks, everybody.
Would we also be able to like take the presentation off so like there's more of people's faces that are shown?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, count us down, Class C, and we'll give you a smile.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, done.
Quick and painless.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have about 5-6 minutes left. Nice to see some more faces. Thanks for turning the cameras on, everyone. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask Michael?
I actually have a question. How do you think the kinesiology program at Waterloo prepared you for like your graduate studies or your career field?
Awesome question. I think it was a fantastic foundation for what I do now. There's stuff that I learned in my 200 level classes that I use and to teach other people with on a day-to-day basis, almost, it seems, with respect to human factors and biomechanics or physiology or whatnot. And I think if you take the time to go out and explore some of those electives a little bit outside of the traditional path, I think gear those towards industry that you think you would be working in, kind of thing, because those give you the additional benefit. But I think like the core foundational classes were very helpful in my career and also day-to-day life. Like I think about my nutrition class, was that Kin 217 or something like that back then, but we learned so much in those classes that you can apply to your own health on a day-to-day basis going forward. So that helps you, keep your fighting machine lean and trim, kind of thing, in order to be able to be effective at your job. And so I do appreciate that as a background, which I never thought it was that I would take that much from it to my current life. Yeah, as a preparatory for what you're doing next, I think it's a solid option. It's been a great background. Don't be afraid of the math and the physics parts of it, or the science is what I would say. And what else can I add? I think comparatively to other schools as well, it's on a different level in that you aren't totally focused on physical activity and physical education as a focus. And I think because of that, that makes the kin students a lot more adaptable to the next thing that they do. I think it's a great starting point, actually, as opposed to this is going to be what creates my career necessarily. Maybe I feel that way because I felt like I had to do grad school afterwards, but in grad school, you really got to hone and sort of focus and specialize in an area that made you very useful. I see a problem in the biomedical engineering type of path to this role, in that biomedical engineers don't often get as much human-centered focus in their studies. They get a lot of cellular stuff as well. So they're neither human factors folks or kinesiologists. They're neither engineers because they don't do all of the engineering that like a mechanical or electrical engineer would do. but yet they're kind of this, no one really knows what to do with them in my industry. And so they often have to take another set of courses in graduate work. Usually they do a master's and focus on something, and that helps them get to a similar human factors role. So I would say that if you're looking to do this type of role and work, graduate work might be in your future, just to get that breadth from the other aspects that you need to work in an interdisciplinary type of profession.
And Michael, if students are interested in connecting with you further, what is the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me through email or LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is generally a good way to get a hold of me. And
In the chat here.
Just mention that you are from Waterloo. That's the secret password.
Yep, always.
Happy to answer questions. We've been even entertaining the thought of doing a co-op here, but we're still trying to figure out how that would work. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity there to learn what this industry is all about by actually working in it. And you have in my team, I have some really good mentors, so they would be willing to teach you how to do a bunch of stuff, as well as get you exposure to what we do.
That's great. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. I hope all of you here learned a couple things and got a lot of value out of this nice small group conversation. So thank you all for being here, and Michael for your time. And for any of you that are Faculty of Health kin students, we have another alumni office hour coming up in November with an alumnus who works at Puma. So be sure to check that out if you want to learn about another career option for your degree. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. And
yeah, thank you for your attention. It was great connecting back with all of you, and good luck in your careers and studies.
Yeah, and please feel free to share any feedback and comments you have through 10,000 copies as well.
Great.
And Michael, hang on with me for a minute.
Sure thing.
Thanks, everybody.